Quraysh. Wealth that included the confiscated property of the Muslim migrants was passing by, led by the chief Abu Sufyan. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, called upon his companions to ride out, not for a great battle, but with the hope of intercepting the caravan and reclaiming what was stolen from them. They were a small band, just over 300 men, ill-equipped for a major war. They had only 2 horses and 70 camels among them. They were not an army. They were a raiding party driven by a just cause. But in Mecca, the heart of Arabian pride and idolatry, the news of the Muslim advance was received with arrogant fury. Abu Sufyan sent a frantic message for help, and the Quraysh responded with a magnificent display of their power. They assembled a grand army of 1,000 warriors, clad in iron mail, with 100 horses and a vast train of supplies. Their leaders were the Titans of Arabia, men like the vicious Abu Jahl, Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, and Umayyah ibn Khalaf. They did not march out to defend the caravan. They marched out with the open intention of crushing the new faith of Islam once and for all. They were a people intoxicated with their own power, their state of blessing, having curdled into a blinding arrogance. But amidst their splendor, an unseen force was at play. A divine plan was unfolding, a plan that would lure the two forces, the small band of believers and the great army of idolaters, to a predestined appointment at the wells of Badr. And soon, the first signs of battle fought in two worlds, the seen and the unseen, would appear on the desert horizon. The army of angels and the devil in disguise. The arrival of the divine signs at Badr began with a miracle of mercy. The small Muslim force, upon reaching the valley, was exhausted and filled with gnawing anxiety. They were outnumbered 3-1. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, spent the entire night in fervent, desperate prayer, his hands raised to the heavens, tears streaming down his face as he pleaded with his Lord for the victory he had promised. Then, a divine tranquility descended upon the believers. The Qur'an describes it with beautiful intimacy. Remember, when he overwhelmed you with drowsiness as a security from him and sent down upon you from the sky rain by which to purify you and remove from you the evil of Satan and to make firm your hearts and strengthen your feet. Surah Al-Anfal 8:11. A gentle rain fell, firming the soft sand beneath their feet, while the same rain turned the ground into a muddy quagmire for the Quraysh. Then a peaceful sleep overtook the Muslims, and they awoke refreshed, their fear replaced by a serene resolve. Across the valley, the Quraysh camp was a scene of arrogant boasting. They did not see the impending doom. They saw an easy victory, and their arrogance was being stoked by an unseen, sinister ally. As narrated in the authentic traditions and confirmed by the tafsir scholars like Ibn Kathir, the devil Iblis himself took on a physical form. He appeared to the Quraysh as a respected chieftain from a neighboring tribe, a man named Seerah ibn Malik. He walked among their leaders, his voice a smooth, encouraging poison. "No one will overcome you today," he promised them. "And indeed, I am your protector." The escalating tension reached its peak as the two armies finally stood face to face. The Muslims, with their backs to the wells they now controlled, looked upon the vast, glittering army of the Quraysh, and their hearts trembled once more. It was then that the Prophet received the ultimate divine reassurance. As he prayed, Allah revealed, "Remember, O Muhammad, when you said to the believers, is it not sufficient for you that your Lord should reinforce you with 3,000 angels sent down?" Surah Al-Imran 3:124. And then the heavens opened. The Prophet looked up and saw them, a celestial army descending from the sky. The angel Jibril on his horse led 1,000 of God's most powerful warriors. Their presence a source of terror for the enemy and absolute certainty for the believers. It is narrated in a famous hadith from Sahih Muslim 1763 that on that day, as a Muslim warrior was chasing a polytheist, he heard the crack of a whip from above and the voice of an unseen rider crying, "Forward, Hizam!" And the polytheist fell dead before the Muslim sword could even reach him. The angels were fighting alongside them. It was at this moment that the devil, in the guise of Seerah ibn Malik, saw the heavenly host. The liar, who had promised the Quraysh's protection, was now faced with power he could not challenge. He turned and fled in terror. When the chieftains grabbed him, shouting, "Where are you going?" "Did you not promise to protect us?" he screamed. "Indeed, I see what you do not see. Indeed, I fear Allah." Surah Al-Anfal 8:48. Indeed, I fear Allah. Surah Al-Anfal 8:48. The battle began. The final, unmistakable sign of divine intervention was the sight of the great chieftains of Quraysh falling one by one, off into the hands of the very Muslims they had once tortured. The arrogant men who had marched out for glory were now being cut down by a force both human and angelic. The tide had turned into a miraculous rout. The haunting of the well. The Battle of Badr was a swift and catastrophic defeat for the arrogant Quraysh. Their grand army was shattered, their pride dragged through the dust. 70 of their greatest chieftains and warriors lay dead on the battlefield, and another 70 were taken captive. The men who had left Mecca as kings were now lifeless bodies being gathered by the victorious believers. The punishment for their arrogance was not just a military defeat. It was a profound and eternal humiliation. Their final resting place was not a noble grave, but dark, dry, foul-smelling well at Badr. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, gave the order, and the bodies of the great tyrants, men like Abu Jahl and Bahai bin Rabia, were unceremoniously thrown into the pit. The final turning point was this act. The well, once a source of life-giving water, was now a mass grave, a pit of dishonor for the enemies of God. Its physical haunting began not by jinn, but by the stench of decay, a visceral symbol of their spiritual corruption. The aftermath was a scene of quiet reflection and divine confirmation. 3 days after battle, the Prophet Muhammad stood at the edge of this gruesome well. His companions watched as he began to speak to the dead men inside, calling each of them out by name. "O Utbah, O Shayba, O Abu Jahl," he called, his voice echoing in the still desert air. "Have you found what your Lord promised you to be true? For indeed, I have found what my Lord promised me to be true." The companions were astonished. The great Umar ibn al-Khattab asked, "O Messenger of Allah, how can you speak to bodies that have no souls?" The Prophet's reply was a chilling and profound insight into the reality of the grave. "By him in whose hand my soul is," he said, "you do not hear what I am saying better than they do, but they cannot answer." Sahih al-Bukhari, 3976. This was the true haunting of the Well of Badr. It was haunted by the silent, listening souls of the arrogant dead, forced to hear the truth they had rejected in life. Their punishment was to bear witness, in the first stage of their eternal consequence, to the absolute victory of the man they had tried to destroy. The Qur'an affirms this reality, stating that victory is never from the believers themselves. "And you did not kill them, but it was Allah who killed them. And you threw not, O Muhammad, when you threw, but it was Allah who threw." Surah Al-Anfal 8:17. And so ended the story of the mighty chieftains of Quraysh. Their bodies were left in a forgotten pit, their souls forced to listen to the triumph of the truth. The Well of Badr became a timeless monument, not to jinn or spirits, but to the promise of God, that pride will always be brought low, and that victory belongs only to him and his righteous servants. The story of the Battle of Badr is not a story about jinn. It is a story about angels. It is not about a haunted well, but about a hallowed ground where the forces of heaven descended to defend the forces of faith. The legacy of Badr is one of the most important in all of Islamic history, a source of profound lessons for every generation of believers. Why is this story told in such detail in the Qur'an? It was revealed to solidify the faith of the early Muslims and to serve as an eternal reminder of the sources of true victory. It teaches that the outcome of our struggles is not determined by our numbers, our wealth, or our military might. Victory comes only from Allah, and it is granted to those who possess piety, patience, and absolute trust in Him. This has profound applications for our modern lives. We live in a time where people place their faith in material things, in economic power, in military technology, in political strategies. The story of Badr is a powerful rebuke to this materialistic worldview. It reminds us that there is an unseen reality, a divine dimension to our existence, and that connected with that reality through prayer and righteousness is the most powerful strategic advantage a person or community can have. The power of prayer, The first thing the prophet did when he saw the enemy was turn to his Lord in desperate, heartfelt prayer. This teaches us that our first response to any crisis, personal, communal, or global, should be to turn to Allah in sincere supplication. The importance of humility. The Quraysh were destroyed by their arrogance. They trusted in their numbers and their status. The Muslims were victorious because of their humility. They recognized their own weakness and placed their entire trust in God's strength. This is a timeless warning against the dangers of pride. The reality of unseen allies. The story of the angels at Badr confirms that believers are never truly alone. When we strive in the cause of God, He sends us help from sources we cannot see. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, himself was comforted by this knowledge. He once told his dear friend Abu Bakr, "What do you think of two, the third of whom is Allah?" Sahih al-Bukhari, 3653. This is the source of believers' unbreakable courage. The echoes of the Battle of Badr resonate today not in the whispers of jinn, but in the struggle between faith and materialism, between humility and arrogance, between trust in God and trust in worldly power. The story is a divine promise that no matter how outnumbered or outmatched we may seem, if we are on the side of truth, we have an army of unseen guardians fighting with us. The true haunting is not a well in the desert, but of a conscience that has abandoned its Lord.